We are Georgia and David. In March of 2022, we quit our jobs to travel the world full-time. We are currently exploring Mexico, and our goal is to visit 100 Pueblos Mágicos. So we've arrived at our new hotel, Paraíso del Oso.
This hotel has an option to do all-inclusive, so since we're just staying one night, we did that here as well. So we've got 3 meals. We're getting ready to go eat our lunch before we take off and go exploring, but this place is super cute.
Just finished up our delicious 3-course lunch. We started out with a cream of corn soup, which was very, very good. And then we had chicken fajitas, which were excellent.
Yeah, the chicken was really well seasoned, and then she served it alongside these handmade flour tortillas.
Yep. And then we finished up with some flan, which is probably the best flan I've ever had.
Yeah, you could tell it was homemade. It had like a really nice, like kind of eggy flavor. Really, really good. Now we're heading out and getting ready to explore. One thing that we did learn is the reason that this hotel is called Paraíso del Oso is because there's a rock formation here that looks just like Yogi Bear.
First stop after lunch was Paseo del Dragón.
Which is a really cool like mini tunnel that they carved out of the mountain. Has some great views, but now, as you can see, the views have gotten even better. We're at El Mirador de Cerocahui, and you can see the little town in the valley behind us. Really pretty.
We drove a little less than an hour down some unpaved and very bumpy roads and very windy roads to the mountains to Mirador El Gallego.
And it is completely worth it. We did have to pay an entrance fee of 50 pesos per person, but we're the only ones here. The depth of this canyon is even greater, I believe, than the ones that we saw over the Barrancas del Cobre area. This one is between 2,300 and 2,500 meters deep. It is wild looking down, and there's this little town with a little river running through. So we're gonna see if we can maybe fly the drone here to get some different views.
So next stop was Cascada De Cerocahui.
Unfortunately, you may be able to see that there is a gate that is locked and crossing the road. It says we're still over 1.8 kilometers away from the Cascada. So we're gonna go ahead and turn around and head into town to go check that out.
20 minutes later.
So once again, Google Maps is stupid in Mexico.
Yeah, that was clearly not the correct road. What I ended up doing was navigating us to kind of the center of town and then navigating us to the waterfall, which then she took us on a completely different road. And as the sign says behind us, Bienvenidos, we have made it. So we're gonna go start the hike.
just made it to the bottom of the majestically dry waterfall.
Yeah, we knew that it was likely going to be dry given how dry everything is this time of year. The hike to this waterfall is literally uphill both ways. You go up to then go down, so then you have to go back up to then go down to your car. It took us a half hour. I would say it was probably about 2 kilometers, maybe 1.5 kilometers, but it definitely isn't easy. So I probably wouldn't recommend doing it unless it actually has water.
After our strenuous hike, we come back into town to check out the main church.
From what I've read online, that is about all there is to do in the center of this town. It is extremely small. There is a very famous hotel here, the Mission Hotel, and it is actually the sister property to the Mirador Hotel that we stayed at just a couple nights ago. And they have their vineyard here that they grow all the grapes for the wines that we tasted in the wine tasting that we enjoyed over there. We enjoyed the wine tasting more, though, because of the people we met than the wine itself, to be quite honest.
After a long hike, we figured we earned a beer, so we headed back to our hotel's bar. Afterwards, we had another delicious meal. So we just had our last meal here at Hotel Paraíso del Oso, and again, it was quite yummy.
Yeah, I have to say the food here was very good, especially for, that kind of like all-included food. So definitely recommend it. We got a good night's sleep. The room was really quiet. We came out late at night, and the amount of stars you could see was just wild because there's really almost no light pollution here. So that was very neat as well. But now I'm going to give you a quick tour of the room before we head out to go to El Fuerte. The ride today is only 200 kilometers. So you'd think, oh, that'll take you 2, maybe 3 hours. No, Google says it's going to take us 7 hours. So the road apparently is mostly unpaved. There are giant potholes. So today should be a very fun day of driving. So this is where we spent our only night here. That white door there goes into the main lobby and dining area. And then down this little path is our room. We stayed here in room 17. You can see we had 2 beds, one to store our stuff, one to sleep in. There's a wood-burning stove if you come here in cooler times. I had a place to do my makeup there. We had a place to store our luggage. And then you can see the sink area is outside the bathroom, across from a little closet. And then through here is the shower and of course the toilet. Very clean. Owner was super friendly. And like I said, the food was very good. It's a great location, kind of cool looking up at the little bare stone rock. So very neat. But now we're starting that really rough drive.
The ride started out fairly uneventful. The road was indeed in very poor condition, and there were giant dump trucks constantly coming at us from nearby mines.
So, time for a little story about what happened yesterday.
Started out nice. We had breakfast at 8:15 a.m. And then at 9:30 we were on the road. And by 12 p.m. we had our first flat tire.
Yeah, and this road is completely unpaved. It goes like a lot of hairpin turns around the mountains. So there are very few houses and even fewer little towns along the way, but we were really lucky because we kind of saw a church in the distance. So we were able to drive the Jeep with almost no tire pressure and park it under a tree. Well, just about the worst thing that could have happened has happened. We are about 3 hours into the drive. We are in the middle of nowhere. We have no cell service, and I don't know if you can see that there, but the right front tire is flat. We do have a spare on the back, but where we thought we had a jack, we do not. So we stopped in this little tiny town to hopefully see if anyone has one. The tire's so flat now, we can't go anywhere else. And the first 3 buildings that David has knocked on, no one's been home. One of them looks completely abandoned. So wish us luck.
And then I ran down the road in this little town, and at first I thought it was a ghost town. I thought no one was there. And then I knocked on one door, and a lady answered, and she said the guy down the road could help. So I went there, and he gave me some water, and we grabbed his jack and his wrench, and we hopped in his motorcycle and ran back up to the Jeep.
Yeah, and I was really worried because it was like 110 degrees at this time. So I'm just sitting under the tree watching the gas gauge go down as the air conditioner's going, thinking like, should I turn it off and try to preserve the gas or melt in the car? Or does David find anybody? Is it really a ghost town? Well, today we were very lucky. A guy came by and brought his jack and actually changed the tire while David was getting the spare off the back. And so we're just putting a little bit more air in it and we should be good to go. So we gave him 1,000 pesos for his trouble. We thought, hey, great, all right. Crisis averted, we're okay. But you may have noticed that David said our first flat tire.
Yeah, so a couple hours later, I got tire indicator light for both rear tires going flat. So I drove as far as I could until finally the driver's side rear tire gave out and I had to stop.
Yeah, it was completely shredded. And we hadn't passed anything for about 12 or 15 kilometers at this point, so we were kind of panicking a little bit. Our cell phones had no service the entire way. So we waited a little while and a truck came by and we're like, oh, thank God. And the guy says, oh, hey, no, there's like a little tienda, a little store. It's just like a 5-minute walk down the road and, you know, they'll be able to call for help for you.
So I grabbed a hat, grabbed a bottle of water, and we started walking.
Yeah, I didn't want to be left alone in the Jeep because I didn't know what would happen, so we started going together. And it was probably, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 minutes later, we still had not come across this store, and I started to panic, and I started to think, what if this guy lied? What if he wanted to get us away from the Jeep? We had everything that we owned in it. What if he's broken into the Jeep at this point? I was really starting to kind of lose my faith in humanity.
So then we finally made it to the tienda, if you can really call it that. And the guy there didn't really help us much. He said that there was a house down the way that the guy there might be able to help us. So we walked down there and there was nobody home. And we walked back to the tienda because we had nothing else we could do.
Right, well, it's gone from bad to worse. So I think the problem is because it was over like 107, 110 degrees. And then the road was so rough and the rocks were sharp and there's a lot of glass and stuff. It ate up our back 2 tires. So now one is shredded and one is completely flat. We already used our spare on the front tire, which was the first to go. We walked a little over 2 kilometers to this tiny little store. There is no cell service here. He also doesn't have cell service. But a guy has gone on a motorbike to see if he can find somebody with a ranch here who has a truck to come and help us. So wish us luck. This is the most stressful situation we've had here in Mexico. So then we were just sitting in front of the tienda waiting, hoping that we were going to get some help, and we heard an engine in the distance, and then we heard that engine stop.
So then we ran down and found out that it was the guy that lived at the house, and he had just returned home with his family.
So luckily he agreed to help us. At this point it was about 4 o'clock. He drove us back up to the Jeep. We took off the flat spare that was on the back and jacked up the Jeep and took off one of the back tires, the one that was in better condition, threw it in the back of his truck, and then he took us into town. Okay, so to give you an update on what has happened, we did find a guy who had a truck, and he was nice enough to take us back to our Jeep with a jack. We took off the back spare tire that was blown as well as the one that was less deflated, threw it in the back of his truck, and he drove us an hour and a half into town, called around, found somebody that had our tires. They were used, but it was a good deal. It was only 2,500 pesos for both. They mounted them to our rims, and then we came to the gas station to get gas before heading back the hour and a half to the Jeep, and now his truck won't start. So we're all hanging out in the Oxo parking lot waiting for a mechanic. So it has just been the day to beat all days. You can see it's getting quite dark, so we're definitely going to be driving in the dark tonight on a very, very bumpy road.
So the mechanic did show up, and he did fix the problem, and then about an hour later, the truck broke down again.
Yeah, luckily at this point we were close enough to the guy's house that he was able to send one of the neighbors for help. A lot of the people in that area have satellite phones because there is no cell service. So I don't know if it was his son or a brother or somebody came down and brought an extra battery, and they put it in and we were able to jump start the truck. I think the guy's alternator was blown, but anyway, we went back to his house finally.
And his wife was very worried because we hadn't eaten all day, and she offered us some food, but we were like, no, we have to get on the road, it's getting late.
Yeah, but she absolutely insisted, so she packed us up a plate. I didn't even really look at what it was. We just jumped in his other vehicle with the tires and drove up to the Jeep. At this point, it was about midnight.
So we changed the tires, and then we drove back down to his house to clean up a little bit because it was super dirty out there.
Yeah, this was like the dustiest place we have ever been. It was really quite rough all the way around. It was hot, it was dusty, it was isolated, there was no cell service. It was kind of one of those worst case scenarios. But honestly, it was also one of those experiences where we felt really lucky because if we'd broken down in a different place, it could have taken us hours to walk to find help. Also, like, this guy took so much time out of his day. I mean, he started helping us at 4 o'clock and he didn't get home until well after midnight. We did put 1,000 pesos worth of gas in his car, and at the end of this we tried to give him 3,000 pesos.
He refused it.
And he's like, oh, no pasa nada. Oh, no, it's nothing.
I was like, no, you're taking this.
We're like, absolutely, that was not nothing. And he finally did take the money. But I mean, just the nicest people. He gave us multiple bottles of water. His wife was very concerned about me and how hot I was, and let me use their bathroom and get all cleaned up because I had just dust everywhere from trying to help out. And so long story short, we got back in the Jeep. We made the drive into El Fuerte. We arrived here at 3 a.m. And if you've stayed in any hotels in Mexico, you know that most of them don't have 24-hour front desks. So I was thinking we were just gonna have to stay in our car until they opened at like 6 a.m. But no, again, we were super lucky. And the guy was able to get us checked in. We were able to take showers and get cleaned up. And then finally I opened the little to-go packet that she had made, and she'd made us 4 delicious beefsteak quesos with like homemade flour tortillas.
Probably one of the best ones we've ever eaten. And if it was warm, oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, it was just something that really warms your heart because we would have been in so much trouble if people didn't help us. We were at a point where we could not help ourselves. There was nothing that we could do. And that's the thing. Here in Mexico, we occasionally kind of put ourselves in danger. Obviously, we were not on a toll road. We were in the middle of nowhere. We had no cell service. But when we do things like that and some of these crazy hikes, I just know that when we find a Mexican, they will help us. Yeah. They've always ended up pulling through and taking care of us when we needed it. And that is one of the things that I absolutely love about this country. Well, we can finally say, welcome to El Fuerte. This very colorful riverside Pueblo Mágico is our 98th.
After getting in at 3 a.m. last night, we got a late start. First mission was to get the Jeep washed because it was absolutely filthy.
Our second stop was to eat at the most famous seafood restaurant here in El Fuerte, and the food was fantastic. All around Mexico, we've seen signs for Sinaloa-style seafood, and this is our first time having seafood in Sinaloa, and I definitely understand the hype. I got the local river fish that was chicharron style, so it was cut up into little cubes and then deep fried. Absolutely delicious. We also shared some fried shrimp, and then David got that same river fish stuffed with shrimp and cheese and really pulpo. Good. It was so delicious. The price was very reasonable. The owner was super friendly. I'm honestly sad that we're not staying here longer because I would love to go back to eat there.
So our next mission was to try to find a tire for at least the spare on the Jeep. We went to every tire shop, couldn't find one.
Yeah, nobody had our size. So we'll try again when we get in Mazatlan. Hopefully that last tire holds out for the rest of the ride. But we're gonna spend the rest of this afternoon showing you what El Fuerte has to offer.
After a beautiful and very sweaty river walk, we decided it was time for a drink.
So we decided we were going to come up to Hotel Rio Vista to have a drink at their bar because it has some amazing views. But unfortunately, it looks like their bar and restaurant right now are not working. So since we're already at the top of the hill and we're already sweaty, we're going to go ahead and check out the Fort Museum.
We just finished up here at the El Fuerte Museum, and El Fuerte isn't just the name of the town, it also means the fort. And it was 20 pesos per person to get in, and it was worth it just for the views alone.
Yeah, it also is the town museum though, and it goes over some of the history. We did learn a few cool facts. The first is that back when we were in Cuernavaca for Dia de Independencia, they put on a bunch of dances from different parts of the country. And there was a very interesting one where this guy had a deer head on and they pretended that there were some hunters that shot him. It was very interesting, and we learned that that comes from this area. Also, that at one point the state of Sinaloa and Sonora were combined, and the capital of that state was right here, El Fuerte. And the last thing is that there was a very important battle fought here with Pancho Villa's forces against the government forces at the time, right here, the Batalla or Battle of El Fuerte. But now, I think it's finally time for that well-deserved beer that we tried to get earlier.
With Concheritos in hand, we decided to take a ride on Train Mexico. Our final stop was to grab a photo in front of the town letters.
So this is where we spent the past 2 nights, well, maybe kind of like 1.5 nights here in El Fuerte. That is where we were able to park the Jeep out front. And then if you come down this hall here, our room was number 13. You can see here we had a double bed, 2 nightstands, AC unit. There was a little bit of closet space over here. And then here is the full bathroom. There was not enough storage space here. We had a little difficult time. We needed an extra table or a dresser. Oh, and there's a TV there. All right, and then back through here, there is a little pool area. We never did get a chance to use the pool, but there it is.
Thanks for watching, and as always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please leave them down below. If you haven't already, check out last week's video where we explored Barrancas del Cobre.